Hey traders, Raghee here. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to Charts and Coffee for September 28th, winding down the month of September. Great to see you all. All right, so let's get to it. My birthday month is ending. Yes, I make sure that the entire month is my birthday month. So sad thing. All right, great to see everybody. Good morning, good morning. Okay, so just a quick reminder before we hop into the questions, looking at my schedule and, of course, looking at the calendar. We are not lacking any Fed speak this week at all. And we have the main guy, we have Powell coming on at 10. Now, Evans is on right now, and I'm not seeing a whole lot of movement because, let's face it, who's going to move on Evans when 1 hour later we have Powell? And then after he's done, this is a testimony about the CARES Act, we have Bowman and Bostic. Bostic has been potentially a market mover, and then you look at what time he is slated to be on, going right into the last hour of the day. Look out. There could be some serious volatility going into the close. Speaking of volatility, you take a look at what's been happening this morning. Lots of weakness coming into this market. If you step back and look at a shorter term time frame, I like to see where the weakness came in, right? Where was it that the acceleration to the downside happened? So if I look at 1600, kind of a flat day in the US, and this would have been Monday, right? And through the doldrums and then into Asia, we managed to somehow get back into the range. Take a look here, and this is between the UK, well, I should say Europe and the UK. I mean, this is where we see that, movement to the downside, a little bit of leveling out around 7 a.m., which tells me, in terms of the US session, we may not be as obvious for another leg lower, although who knows. But just think about the fact that this is the move, who did it, and where the markets seem to have found a low and another range, and that's kind of going into that US session. All right. So I'm not necessarily, just like yesterday, I wasn't necessarily a seller on the open. In fact, we had two buy setups yesterday. One was the Dow, didn't pan out too well, and the other was the bonds, and that just ripped higher for our intraday play. And I'll take that sort of first come first serve type attitude, which is what's the bias of the market? Yes, there's a number of things we can make note on the daily. It's definitely looking more and more like distribution. We definitely have enough by way of reason to believe that the markets could see Fed speak move price action around. We're below key VWAPs. However, we're still in chop. This is not a downtrend yet. I don't have the organization of enough red grab candles to say this is a market that is in a downtrend. I'm just not there yet in terms of that kind of action. So let's see here. There we go. Same thing goes on the NAS. In fact, the NAS is actually, just pretty choppy, but not bearish. So whenever you see chop, remember that the psychology that's going to influence the chop is the one that preceded. Yes, there is a chance of reversal, moving lower, organizing into a downtrend, of course. But the higher probability, the likelihood is that usually uptrend, chop, and continuation. If you use continuation as your default, it's going to serve you much better over the long run of your trading. All right, let's hop into the questions here. As always, great to see everybody. I will see you all in the futures room for the open, 9:20 to 11:30 in about 15 minutes. And I'll see you all in the options room for 9:20 to 10:30 this morning. I'll be filling in for the first hour or so of the open. All right. So good morning. Good morning. Hey there, Ian. I was wondering, when I look at previous session high, low, close, am I looking at the previous candle as a whole? Yes. I don't want to look at 9:30 to 4. No, I like to look at, not that dissimilar from what we just did on this 5-minute chart of the S&P. I don't just limit it to 9:30 to 4. I'll look at the candle as a whole usually. Now, if you want to do both, because you want to be aware of gap implications, the support and resistance that gaps do you create? There's no harm in doing both, but I'll usually look at that more 24-hour, because remember that, you've got the Asian session, you've got the European session, UK session, and I do want to see what ranges those sessions put in as well. And then, an easy way to determine whether or not those sessions gave us meaningful levels is, and I'm on TradingView right now, is look at an intraday chart and look at where the volume, came in. And I think it's really interesting that you can see so much more by way of volume um, getting put in this area. Now that could be a ceiling or that could be a floor. We'll wait for the open to see which end of our support and resistance based on volatility and volume we get to first. And then after 10 a.m., after the clearing, we can once again look at those levels and see what's in play from potential price setups, price action specific setups. All right. Thanks for the question, Ian. Melissa, good morning. Can I take a look at Goldman? Sure. Strong sector. Agreed. Previous double green. Yes. Pull back into the wave on the daily. It's exceeded the wave, right? I mean, we've gone below the wave, and that break happened specifically on the 17th of the month. We're coming back to the wave, but having organized into a neutral JT multi and having plotted a certain number of grab candles here, and I like 2, this is a broken trend. I don't really worry about one grab or even one blue, despite the yellow, as far as a broken trend. But when I get the red and the yellow JT multi trend, which is the lower of the 2 rows here, that's a broken trend. Yeah. So with that being said, what I would say is you may want to look a little bit more broadly. You might want to, let me do this here with you real quick. You may want to take a look at, and this is the multi-chart. Yes, I've actually updated the layout a little bit. So rather than the one large chart in the upper left-hand corner like I've done in the past, what I've done is just made them all equal. Same number of charts. It's still the main tide and then the 11 boats. But I just figured it was a little bit bigger for the boats. So same multi that you've seen before. The tide is here, and then the individual boats in order. So this will be 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm looking at the weighting as an impact to the sector. All right, so XLF is trying to move higher, but what has a better, maybe slightly more intact trend? And it's actually a little difficult to find apart from, I'd say down here, SPGI. Dips in SPGI might be a better way to go, because almost every one of these charts has, even Morgan, which I was thinking that might be a relative outperformer, but I've got the red grab candles and the yellow lower JT multi. That's a broken trend. So with that being said, at this point, you've got a lot of momentum plays. So I'd be very, very careful. And if the S&P is in this kind of mood, well, XLF is not going to be in a great mood typically either. All right. Now, it might be able to defy gravity, but it's going to have to work a whole lot harder to do it. I'd probably keep an eye on SPGI. It's a little pricier, but I'd probably keep an eye on SPGI. And any kind of close of the gap on XLF, meaning say 38.21 could be a very interesting level. Just 50 cents could be a very interesting way to engage XLF on a pullback. Okay, but I'd probably pass on Goldman, and for the same reason I mentioned the other ones. Okay, but again, if XLF keeps moving higher, it's likely going to take the boats with it. So keep that in mind. All right, so next question is, bear with me. Good morning, good morning. Yep. Let's see. Hey there, FOMO. How are you? How are you? I am doing pretty well. We'll see what today brings. I'm pretty anxious to see if we'll get some HPMR or V-score lows when I'm in the room this morning. Okay, so JMO. And by the way, when I break down something like XLF like this, looking for relative outperformers, this is where when you're able to identify the relative outperformers or the individual stocks that are even in a minor way, look at the upper row of the JT multi on JP Morgan, Bank of America, starting to on Morgan, Wells Fargo, Schwab, American Express, and then you just see this absolute double green on SPGI. It's that nuance of what is simply in a higher probability environment for follow through that makes such a big difference. And if you don't know already, and I just want to mention it, it's coming up on October 6th at 8 p.m. Eastern. We have a webinar on what I do with ETFs specifically. Sometimes I'm using the ETF because it's a far more affordable way into the trade, into a trade that might involve Facebook and Google or Tesla and Amazon. Because of high concentration weighting, ETFs are more influential and for a trader, way more strategic, and they continue to be. So super stoked to bring that to you all on the 6th. All right, so the question is JMO. All right, JMO. Am I seeing that right? Oh no, I think you said at JMO. Okay, my bad. I see capital letters and I immediately think it's a symbol. You're lucky y'all are lucky I don't pull up good morning or GM all morning long, right? Okay, so Netflix. All right, let's take a look at Netflix. I got a lot of questions about Netflix and Tesla overnight in my inbox, in my email. And I can see why, right? I mean, look at Netflix. In a sea of distribution, in a sea of chop, meaning the lower row of the JT multi is yellow. Here's Netflix, one of the rare instances of a double green. Green grab candles, love that. Really nice intact wave, love that. I don't want to short it, that's for sure. But if we're going to be specific to the weakness that we want to take advantage of, it was these two candles. It was those two wicks that appeared on the 20th and on the 21st of September that create the opportunity to, you guessed it, what is that? That is buy the dip. And people might think, well, is buy the dip valid anymore? It isn't if the market's in chop, because if the market's in chop, you're thinking overbought, oversold, and oversold buys are not a dip, right? It's support. You're buying off support. It's a fade. And so is buy the dip in many ways, but this is when you have an intact uptrend. It pulls back to the zone. You enter the trade when the market hits the wave. 2 days, 2 opportunities. Almost had one yesterday for a third, but I'm not going to engage it up in this area. I'm going to wait till it hits the wave. So I like the probability of this market continuing to move higher because the structure just suggests that is still the path of least resistance. Yeah, so that's Netflix. Now, the other symbol that I got a lot of questions on was Tesla. And Tesla's another one of those examples where you have that double green, really good structure. And in terms of double green and probability, you take a look at the double green, you take a look at the grab candles, right? And by the way, you can download the grab candles from countdowntrader.com. We have a number of downloads you can grab over at Countdown Trader. The color-coded candles are one of them. Toss, TradeStation, they're already in TradingView. So if you search simpler under the indicators, you'll see all the indicators we have available on TradingView. So I look at the JT Multi, I look at the grab candles, I note the really nice support within the wave. Awesome. So, Tesla's moving higher. That's great. But again, specifically, what are the opportunities? What are the days we're looking for? Days that look like September 13, days that look like September 20, and even minorly September 21, where we hit the top line of the wave. So that's the structure by way of the JT multi. And then overlay of the grab candles that we're looking for. And, the entire time, I think it's worth mentioning that we've stayed above the zero. We've stayed above the mean of the V score. So it's hard to not like this transition of struggling along the mean to getting above it to just confirm more bullishness. So both Netflix, both Tesla, they look really, really good. All right. So next up, yeah, Battlehawk. Yeah, I looked up HI yesterday when you said hi. I am I'm in symbol Terminator mode during the day. Can we check out Morgan? Yeah, Stevie B, I do like Morgan. I mean, as far as maybe not the best in terms of relative outperformance, SPGI is better, but I will say that only two red, pretty rapid bounce, shorter duration in the yellow. Just be careful because truly, this is no longer a trend. Please know the trend is broken. Is it buyable? I would say the same stuff that I talked about with XLF, perhaps closing the gap, SPGI. After you get past XLF closing the gap and SPGI, you're really looking at the other stocks within XLF, almost looking identical in terms of a handful of red grab candles, breaking the trend and then rallying as we're seeing flow back into financials. So that's what I'm looking at right now. So it's really, I'd rather play the tide because I'm not sure which one of these boats, other than some of the relative outperforming ones, are really going to benefit the most. All right. Next up, do I believe that Netflix can support 560? Okay, specifically. Do I think Netflix can support 560? Oh gosh, that would be the validity for the wave, but we haven't actually broken the top line of the wave. So I'm going to say as long as we're double green on the JT multi, and as long as most of the candles that we're plotting are also green, there's no reason for me to think that it wouldn't. So I've just got to play the probabilities at that point. So my expectation, Ashley, would be yes. Would be yes. Now remember, what could drive Netflix lower? Think about where Netflix is heavily weighted. Think about what happens if those sectors or indices sort of start to wash out, and then how hard Netflix is going to have to just, motor if it's going to fight an outgoing tide. Target, what do I think about the 230 level? Target just went double red. It's very, very fresh, but it just went double red. Probably the best thing going for Target right now, it's still above the 200 propulsion and EMA, and it's still above the first of the year anchored VWAP. And this is basically still keeping it in overall bullish territory, despite the fact that it's trying to transition to a downtrend. So what do I think specifically of 230? I'd probably dial that in a little bit more. Let me double check on that. And tell you probably 232, 233. I know that doesn't sound like much, but what a pain to have an alert at 230 or even a limit order, and you miss it by $2, $3. Been there, done that. I would say your volume ledge at 232.5. I would keep an eye on that, my friend. We're in the same neighborhood, right? Absolute same vicinity, just a little bit of a nuance based on the volume ledge. All right. Good stuff. So let's see. Ashley, your question about the indicators. I do not use Interactive Brokers as a company. We really don't have indicators for Interactive. It's mostly Thinkorswim, TradeStation, and TradingView. So no on Interactive. I don't even know what language they use for coding in terms of their indicators. So, there's always a finite, and I get requests all the time for, whether that be Ninja or this or that. Every one of these platforms has a separate language. The separate language means the indicators have different nuances. You'll notice my V-score across 3 platforms, there's some nuances. They print out the same reading, but There's certain nuances in terms of limitation of graphics and the way they represent on the chart. Supporting multiple platforms, even for myself, right, becomes a challenge. I can support three pretty darn fluently, but if I don't use the platform, it's really difficult for me to even begin coding something up and then passing that on to Lorna or Eric to tighten up. So I don't want to just say no, we don't, but at least usually what happens is if there's a particular platform that gets enough demand, popularity. I think I've been getting a lot about Ninja lately. Eventually that might be something we consider. So no, there's a number that we do not, and that's really why it's a lot of moving parts. Thanks for the question, though. All right, with that being said, that's a wrap on Charts and Coffee. I will see you all in just about 10 seconds over in the options room for the first hour of the day, and in the futures room for our typical Tuesday session. All right, let's see if we can find some day trades. Have a great one. Be good to each other. Keep an eye on that calendar. It just does not let up all week. All right, gang. Be good to each other.